What does that mean?
It means buckle your seatbelt, Dorothy, because Kansas is going bye-bye.
We need the outlet for our rock tumbler.
Plug it in!
What, the rock tumbler or the TV?
The TV!
And as for you, I don't know you, but I'm sure you're a jerk. Hey, I've only been here a few minutes. What's going on?
By the powers vested in me by the Federal Communications Commission, I command you to get on the microphone in a serious manner and continue this broadcast.
Get a podcast.
So why don't all you little idiots press your faces up against the speakers and blow your brains out?
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to This Week in Geek.net. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman Ashby, and welcome to RAM, Random Access Memory. What does that mean? This is the sort of, what the hell are we going to talk about today? We have an hour to kill. Let's just yap. So this is sort of our very casual kind of hangout show where the topics can literally be anything. Sort of a catch-all show where you don't know who's going to show up. More often than not, it's me, Dave, Ken, and Adam. Occasionally we'll get other people on board, but this is sort of the show that I think Dave actually really kind of pitched the idea to this, where we just want to podcast. We just kind of want to hang out, and we invite you to join us at this random coffee table we call the internet. So
it's almost like a loose cannon after dark. Like
Yeah,
you can almost think of it as that.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good way. So the voice you just heard is from the disembodied force of Ohio.
David Denoyer coming to you from Ohio.
And of course, from the barren wasteland of Tony Soprano.
Ken from this anime.
That's right, guys. So welcome to RAM. And today's topic was literally came up in about the last 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Dave, what the hell are we talking about today?
So we are going to be discussing a particular thing that unfortunately has been lost as the years have gone by, and that is focusing on cable TV. But more specifically, we are going to talk about a specific channel that is particular to us. This could be a local channel, this could be a wide channel, but when it came to cable stations back in the day, you had channels that only your state or your county or whatnot had access to, and they would either have horror hosts or they would have, TV cuts of blockbuster films or, stuff that you would not see otherwise. And we today, gentlemen, are going to focus on one particular of those channels where we saw a lot of movies that we still love today.
I love it. This was such a interesting idea that Dave came up with. And as he came up with this, literally, like I said, the last 5 minutes, it triggered a flood of memories. And I'm trying to find information on my particular choice today, because I'm going to start to give these guys kind of a hot minute to kind of think about it. So I'm mostly going to go off a lot of memories and vibes, but I think that's what's really kind of important. So to give you guys a little bit of history of Birdman. So once upon a time, when I was about 17, turning 18 years old, I unfortunately had to move out of my parents' house. Long story short, I was kicked out for having a girlfriend. Not important. But when I got my first bachelor pad, and I had my first apartment, my first taste of freedom in high school, grade 12, grade 13 in Canada, I had access to the full run of cable TV. And this is when cable internet was a new thing too. So this would have been about 99, 2000, maybe 98, somewhere in there. And I signed up for a cable service named Rogers. Rogers in Canada is one of the largest cable television providers in the country. Pretty much the only game in town, really, unless you're in Quebec, which I think it's called Selectron. Again, might be getting some of these facts wrong. I'm pretty sure Alex will instantly correct me at some point. But anyway, so I had my first digital cable terminal, which was amazing. And I started browsing. Back then, you could purchase channels. And I had the usual, your CTVs, your YTV in Canada, which is still an institution today, pretty much invented the VJ for children's television. But I'm not talking about YTV, which brought Canadian audiences Dragon Ball Z, Gundam Wing, Sailor Moon, all these wonderful shows that you would come to know and love. The channel that I'm picking was a channel called Scream. And you can kind of guess what the subject content of that was. So in high school, I remember I was dating a girl named Ashley, and she was my first serious girlfriend. And I remember I really wanted to show her horror movies. Like I remember one of my best memories I've ever had with a girl was obviously with our clothes on. We would watch franchises stuff. I remember the first DVD box set I ever got was the Nightmare on Elm Street set that was put out in the mid 90s. That was the big brown box set. I don't know what it's called in the community, but it's fairly well respected. Though people hate it because of the Nightmare Encyclopedia. Anyway, getting back on track.
I think it's just the Nightmare Collection. I think that one was just the Nightmare Collection because what I love about that original box set is the fact that you do have the original art posters on the covers of those DVDs. And I've talked shit about the Nightmare Encyclopedia on this podcast numerous times. That said, it was a cool thing to have all of that supplemental material. It was just nobody wants to go through a haunted house at 2 a.m. with their fucking DVD remote.
But say yeah, because it was kind of weird. So when I got the Scream channel, it opened up a whole new world to me because this is something that I never really experienced because unlike our American friends, getting horror on television in Canada was always a bit of a trick. Sometimes you might get it on CTV or City TV. You never see it on Global outside of like major events. You would get like the Stephen King It thing, the Langoliers. Sometimes they come back when television movies were kind of a thing. However, Scream was at the beginning of those premium television channels that were hyper focused on one particular topic. There would be like a crime/court TV back when Oprah's television channel was called the Women's Network, that sort of thing. So Scream was focused on horror movies, and it would show a lot of your classics, your Freddys, your Jasons, your Michael Myers. You might get the odd classic stuff that you may not have never seen in there. But what really captivated me about it is how wholly it embraced the culture of like horror movies. And I remember seeing little documentaries. There were even horror hosts that would pop up from time to time. These really attractive young ladies, or maybe ladies in like their mid 20s, mid 30s. And they would come out and they would host major events. Like if there was like a Friday the 13th, they would show not the whole series in order. And I always found that really strange. They'd always get like 1, 3, 5, and maybe like 6, but you would never see 7. You'd never see 8. You'd never see Jason Goes to Hell. I guess it was like a rights issue or something. But what really took me and what always makes me stand out in my mind was the imaging for this channel. And I just posted this in our little YouTube or in our little Facebook chat. And someone on Reddit had found this on YouTube, and it's a link to all the promos that you would see on this television channel. And I'm just going to bring this up on my computer really quickly. Hopefully I don't fuck things up while I'm doing this. Oh, no, there we go. And you would get stuff for Black Christmas, The Exorcist, Mistress Olga from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They would show, hell, I didn't even know this. They would show Aliens. They would show Friday the 13th. You would see so many things, and you'd randomly see fucking Die Hard 2. I don't know why. Mad Max, but it embraced this weird era of excess and stupidity. But there was just something about it that really made me fall in love with genre again. Like, I've always loved horror movies, but I never had a dedicated way that wasn't like going to the video store. I could never just throw on a channel and there it was. Like, when I had my first cable, because like I said, to me, this is a wondrous, magical device. I had horror movies and pornography. Yes, I signed up for the Playboy channel. I'm not afraid to admit this. I love the show Night Calls. But it was something that was just so me. Like, I'd never had a television channel that I felt spoke to me specifically, and why TV, as much as awesome as it was to see Hiro Yui and Gundam Wing, okay, that's cool, but you're also showing fucking Blue's Clues, so cool, I guess. But Scream, like I just mentioned, Aliens, fucking RoboCop, I remember being shown on this channel a number. Actually, I seem to recall RoboCop 2 being shown a number of times. And I remember me and Ashley would just have this on as the background noise in our house. There was always either gunfire, scream, or the sound of flesh being squished or cut. That would explain a lot about our relationship, I'm going to imagine. But yeah, it's something that I discovered very much by accident, because unlike you guys who had, I'm going to guess, freer access to entertainment, the only other thing I really had when I was a kid growing up is we had those big fuck off satellite dishes in our backyard, which used to run on transponder channels. And I used to love Fox as well. But the thing is, I couldn't watch Fox until my parents went to bed. And what I mean by that is my grandparents who raised me would go to bed on midnight on a Friday night. Okay, cool. Weird kid, right? But what would happen is the channels that because satellite would work on these things called transponder channels. You could browse anything from 001 to like transponder channel like 200 something, and you were basically talking to a satellite literally in space. So I discovered one night while browsing the transponder channels, because we had like a cable guy who showed us how to work this. I think it was Mr. Ruth or something. But I remember when I first discovered the Fox transponder channels, and you might be saying, okay, why is that a big deal? I could see the Saturday morning cartoons the night before. So if I was willing to stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning, I could watch the X-Men and Spider-Man rather than have to wait until 10:30, 11 o'clock the following morning on Fox Kids. And I could see the commercial breaks were not yet inserted. So I would literally see the color bars saying, insert commercial here, 2 minutes, 30 seconds. And it was amazing to me, because that was meant for the local affiliates to drop in their stuff. You'd still get the Fox commercials like, hey kids, it's Eek the Cat and Eek Stravaganza and whatever. But that was really fucking cool to me. But yeah, the two channels that stick out in my mind the fucking most were Scream and the Fox transponder channels. And because this is RAM, this is very much a loosey-goosey conversation. Whatever happens, happens. I'm sure I'll remember something else. Hell, I might even get a little bit risque, because this is After Dark. So yeah, whoever wants to pick up the ball, run with it.
So I have 3 in mind off the top of my head, because so I come from the great state of Ohio, and we have a decent amount of channels cable-wise with the package that we got for Time Warner Cable back in the day, that my parents had, because we didn't really get premium cable like HBO, Showtime. We didn't really get that until I was in high school. The only teases we got of that stuff was when it was like, here's a free week of Encore, here's a free week of Cinemax and whatnot. So my upbringing on films early on came from the video store and the VHS cabinet, as well as cable. I watched a lot of stuff on cable. And in doing so, I had to find out which channels obviously had uncut movies versus, TV cuts. And it's funny because, you grow up watching movies on TV. You watch them later on, like, whether it's you're on a disc copy that you have or, on a premium channel. And it's just like the TV cuts of some of these films are so different from the actual movies. And it was funny enough that just a couple nights ago, I watched The Thing, the network broadcast release. Have either of you gentlemen ever seen that version?
No, can't say I have, no.
Literally, no joke. It has voiceover narrations for each time you meet the characters in the movie. So, like, it comes up to, like, Kurt Russell, and it's like, McCready, ex-helicopter pilot, da-da-da-da-da. Like, it gives these voiceover narrations for their characters, giving you an introduction, tells you what they're doing in Antarctica, and then at the very end of it, it reuses the footage from the opening of the dog running from the burning village and whatnot, And it has this narration where it's like, who knows what exists beyond these galaxies? Watch out for you, yourself, and blah, blah, blah. Like, it was really interesting to see, like, TV cuts. And I think that's one of the things that immediately made me think of my first pick on this, and that is WGN TV out of Chicago. They were channel 17 or 19 here when I was a kid, and this was our local affiliate for Bozo the Clown. They had a bunch of famous shows that like got syndicated all over. They were also the host for the CW, but WGN also carried a lot of great cable titles for movies and whatnot. And this was kind of a deep cut station, simply because the movies they picked like were stuff that you wouldn't expect, like Fox to carry, or ABC, CBS movie of the week or whatnot. And one of the ones that comes to mind immediately was the place I saw Critters 3, Birdman.
Oh wow, with Leo.
And young David discovered Critters 3 because this is the one thing also I truly miss of these days is just the fucking cable advertisements, the little mini TV spots for coming up this week or coming up tonight on WGN. And I remember seeing the Critters 3 ad, and it was saying starring Leonardo DiCaprio, blah, 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 blah. So I was aware this was coming on, and I don't know, I mean, I was probably like 5 or 6 at this point, maybe 7. And I remember, I was home, it was on one night, and I was channel surfing, and god damn it, if I did not come across the scariest scene in that movie when DiCaprio goes to check on his dad, and the critters have gotten him. So that was my first introduction to Critters. You mentioned Nightmare on Elm Street earlier. WGN was also the place that I saw the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes of Dream Child, Nightmare 5. And I remember distinctly Freddy literally coming in contact with the nun and him being like, we'll see. And then it's like you grow up and you're like, oh, we'll see, bitch. We'll see. Like, it was one of those channels that you could find. Fuck, man, that's the first channel that I ever saw Terminator 2. That's the first time I ever saw Terminator 2 was on WGN. So I watched a probably 3-hour version of Terminator 2 on cable. So much so that I remember WGN cut out Todd and Jeanette's death because I did not see Todd stuck to the cabinet. They completely cut that out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Like, WGN was the place that I could go to for deep dive into those, like, 90s, 80s movies that didn't, like, get shown a lot. I remember that's how I first saw The Stepfather, which was largely unavailable for most of my upbringing. Like, as far as if you didn't have the VHS, you couldn't see it. But The Stepfather was one that scared the shit out of me. WGN had those movies that, like, should I have been watching? Since they were TV cuts, yeah, I don't think there's any harm in it. But at the same time, like, hey, David, here's Bozo the Clown one day. Oh, and here's Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Enjoy.
You know what's weird? When you mentioned WGN, you triggered a flood of memories. And what I mean by that is when you mentioned Bozo the Clown, in a very real way, that was my first real exposure to American culture.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds really funny to say because Mike, you're in fucking Canada. But it was something, it was almost like, to me, I saw The Simpsons on regular Fox because my local channel up here, Global, would carry The Simpsons Sunday nights at 8 p.m., much like it has since time immemorial.
At this point.
Yeah, and seeing Bozo the Clown was like, stuff like Krusty the Clown really exists. And it was so interesting because WGN was Americana to me. And what I mean by that is there was Bozo the Clown, Judge Joe Brown, and all like
the lottery.
The lottery.
Fucking lottery was hosted on WGN. You had sporting events, you had daytime talk shows. I mean, it was a genuine piece of Americana. No, you're absolutely right. And yeah, and they also had a kick-ass lineup when it came to movies. 100%.
Oh yeah, like I remember in the early 90s when my parents would put WGN on television because my parents were old and that's all they did was watch TV. I remember seeing Sally Jesse Raphael, Ricky Lake, Oprah when she actually did a talk show.
I
Phil
miss
Donahue.
Maury when it wasn't "You Are the Father." I
Father,
miss the
yes!
boot camp episodes. I miss the my kid is dating an older man episode. Like I miss those ones that's not just
That
distinctly
became
"You Are the Father."
Basically, Dr. Phil took over that section.
But then
Yeah.
he ran it
What
into the
Murray
fucking
became.
ground too.
Yeah.
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 I mean, it's wild how much WGN was like honestly an institution, because like I forgot when you mentioned the lottery. I remember when that was like a big deal, and I forgot about all the great movies that they showed, and the fact that it was I think honestly, I want to say it was even a part of my cable package. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I remember it being on satellite, and WGN was so reliable for entertainment. I honestly can't think of any other channel that best in my mind at the time represented what America was. It was like, here's some cool TV shows, here's some great daytime whatever, here's soap operas, and then in the evening, the best of the best. You would see like the best sitcoms, the best whatever. I don't recall much news coverage.
They had a 6 and a 10 or 11. They had a 6 because and it was short. I think they only had like 20 minutes of actual news, with with commercials and everything. So I think it was a pretty quick news program. The one thing that I did also remember too just now is they also hosted some cartoons that like other channels didn't show. Like classic ones. I remember Inspector Gadget was on there. I remember. I think Wishbone was on WG. No, that's PBS. Fuck, what am I thinking of?
You're probably thinking of a bunch of Deke shows.
Yeah, you're probably right.
They probably just got like a giant Deke package, because I remember some of them. Like my local was Channel 11, and it was like they would play Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd Century.
Yeah.
Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and I forget what the third one in that block was. It was always random. It was a very random block, and it was before the Kids WB block, which was a huge part of my childhood.
They may have had Erie, Indiana at one point too. Now that
I
I
think
about it.
I think so, but I'm pretty sure I saw that on Fox. I'm almost positive that
I think
did.
it was a Fox show, but they may have picked up syndication for who knows. But
Mhm.
yeah, WGN was just like that was a time capsule of great entertainment on multiple levels. But yeah, the movies that I picked up on there were incredible, and that verges me into the next one, which I gotta just give an honorable mention to, which is Movieplex. Movieplex was, I think, Baby Encore in some way, if I'm not mistaken. I think it might have
in
spun
some
off
way.
of that.
But like I mean, for me personally, I have Encore is really the movie channels that I frequented more than anything else.
That totally makes sense. If I would have had it, I absolutely would have, because that was one of my favorite parts of house sitting for a friend that I haven't house sit for in a while. But like this has been years ago.
Yeah.
But they ended up having that package, that Encore package. And actually, funny enough, Birdman, that's how I saw Sudden Death, was Encore one night while I was house sitting.
For us, like I had access to literally all the premium channels.
Oh, little rich boy.
Little
rich boy.
My parents are big TV heads. That's just generally what it. And we've been so grandfathered into some of these packages that the cable provider is kind of being
Just
an
cable.
asshole.
Yeah.
Homie, do you want to know why we ended up getting the premium channels in fucking high school? Was because my mom wanted to watch True Blood. Now, given I watched True Blood as well, I wasn't against it, but it was like that was literally the push to get HBO and Showtime. Was I was watching Dexter, we were watching True Blood, and also watched Boardwalk Empire.
Encore is where I found a lot of like really good memories with watching movies with my mom. Like we saw it was like Encore Classics or whatever, and it was Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, which is still one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Family Stone was a frequent play on Encore, and that that's one of those
Well, 'cause
movies that such close to my heart. Every Christmas, it's like that's
Oh,
a good one.
it's
to
so
watch.
good. But you had Encore Classic, you had Encore Action, you had Encore Kids.
And then also like some of the fantasy films that I saw on Encore, like I remember seeing Lady Hawk, Dragonheart, like like movies that like completely shaped my childhood in terms of my love of fantasy. And they're just oddballs. They're like not movies that you would necessarily gravitate to. Like I never saw Willow when I was young. I never saw like Dark Crystal.
Still haven't seen Willow to this day in one like
Really?
entire sitting, start to finish. No, I have it. Like I literally have it in my digital library. And and even when Val Kilmer passed last year, I was like, shit, I need to watch Willow finally. I need to get on it. I've heard it's good. And I'm curious to see, but I don't know. It's just one I'm never prompted to watch Willow.
There's a whole plethora of these fantasy films that everyone's like, oh, that was like my childhood, and I'm like, no, I'm the weirdo. I love Lady Hawk. I love Dragonheart.
Do you still like Lady Hawk?
Oh, I still love Lady Hawk. I own
because I'll say this. I think Lady Hawk is not a bad movie by any stretch. I just the last couple times I've gone back to it, I just have not enjoyed it as much as I used to.
And it definitely shaped my like love of like the weirder fantasy films, which is why I love films that kind of harken back to those like Warcraft, like Last Witch Hunter and stuff like that. Like that feels more my jam in terms of fantasy versus some of the more like big epic stuff like Lord of the Rings and like big populist fantasy pieces. Like I'm always the guy. I like this little weird film over here.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean but like you were saying how that
and
shaped
the same
your fantasy.
And the same thing with sci-fi. Like, it's probably why I am a huge stand of Jupiter Ascending, because that movie is just weird, like pure, absolute weird.
Well, I mean, homie, you're talking to the guy that like has an unabashed love for Cool as Ice and Nothing But Trouble. Like, my love of movies is simply for the fact that some point in history, a studio said, yes, here's some money. We like this script. Go make this, and we're going to put this out to the public. It's like, there's so many movies that were made out there that are sitting undiscovered, but also just sitting unloved. And cable was a good point of that. Like you brought up a good point with the fantasy thing. Now that I think back to it, WGN gave me a lot of horror titles that have stuck with me. So that kind of also shaped the horror fan.
And like for me, like I didn't get into horror until like tail end of high school. And what shaped me was really bad found footage horror, oddly enough. That really just kind of clicked with me, and then I got into Saw. I got into some weird rabbit holes.
Yeah.
And it definitely shaped my horror. I'm very much someone that's like, a good horror film has an emotional core to it. And if a horror film can scare the piss out of me, but also make me cry, that becomes a huge part of why I love certain horror films.
I can't think of many horror films that have ever made me cry. Maybe give me a jump scare.
Like
it's weird. You mentioned sci-fi in there, and again, triggered baby memory. I recall the first anime I ever saw, and it was on the Sci-Fi Channel. Again, going back to the big fuck off satellite. I remember a lot of this leading up.
Been like Eon. What was it, like Eon Flux or something? Because I'm like, did they air a lot of animes early on?
No, they did, and they were movies. So the first 3 anime movies I saw, 2 of them I've talked about, 1 I haven't. The first anime I ever saw was outside of like fucking Astro Boy, and that doesn't count for the purposes of this conversation. But it was an anime movie that I feel very few people have heard of. I've now found it on YouTube. Is a movie called Lensman. And I was like, what the fuck is this? This is a cartoon? Why does this look so cool? But what really took me was the Sci-Fi Channel showed that movie, and then immediately after, this would have been around 91, I want to say. Maybe as late as 92. And again, I got the satellite for a couple hours on a Saturday afternoon. And I remember watching Vampire Hunter D, which is fucking weird, but fucking awesome.
I have
Vampire
not seen
Hunter
that since
D is-
college. Holy shit! I need to revisit that.
I have the Blu-ray. So,
and seeing this as a child, I was like, what? And
that would really confuse you as a kid.
Yeah, because I'm like, this is animated? Why is this so violent? Why does this girl look so hot? Why does the guy look so awesome? And then the other part that caught my attention, because I may be remembering the promo wrong, but I think the promo was voiced by Peter Cullen, aka Optimus Prime. Or maybe it was Gary Chalk, who was Optimus Primal. But I seem to recall them doing a promo for Akira. And the scene that sticks out in my mind is the classic scene that has been imitated across so many different medias, is the motorcycle slide scene with Kaneda.
Yeah.
Where he does the slide. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And
the coolest scene that has been replicated so many times. And
yeah.
I remember one of the best, like, I get that reference, was watching it was Jordan Peele's Jordan Peele got to do an Akira slide in one of his recent films, and it's just like, hey, good on you, man.
But yeah, it was like, because like when like I was growing up and I first saw this, my action cartoons were G.I. Joe, Ninja Turtles, Transformers. X-Men hadn't come out yet. Spider-Man the animated series hadn't come out yet. So Western animation was still catching up in terms of what really good action pacing could be. And G.I. Joe, yeah, sure. G.I. Joe. I mean, even Transformers, the action scene, I mean, the character models are what you were there for. The action scenes were kind of shoot, gun, punch, Megatron, Galvatron, whatever. But when I saw these anime, again, I'd never seen character models look so different from what I was expecting. Sailor Moon would be like maybe a year or two later. Dragon Ball Z, maybe within the next 3 years. And again, it was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. And it was just a random channel. I was like, what the fuck is this? The Sci-Fi Channel. I'm like, what?
Going back to animation and fantasy, like it clicked with me. It's like, I saw Last Unicorn on cable.
Oh, wow.
It was definitely like it was one of those weird movie channels that don't exist anymore, for sure. But like that was definitely when I first saw The Last Unicorn. I didn't see all of the movie. I saw only a portion of it, and it just stuck with me because it's such beautiful animation. And again now I own the 4K, and it's oh my god, just like immaculate.
So,
4K.
I have another pull for you in terms of television, and this is going to expose me, but I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds here, only because I have a reputation to uphold. The adult channels, and yes, sexy ladies, but it wasn't that totally caught my attention. It was the programming that was more reality based. as much as that can be in the adult industry. Like, I've known a number of people in the adult industry over the years, some of which who've now passed away, unfortunately. And my early fascination, like anybody, begins as a teenage boy with entirely too much hormones. But I remember watching the Playboy channel, as I alluded to earlier. Of course, I'm in charge of my own cable bill. Yes, please. And I remember watching on the Playboy channel, there was this show called Night Calls that was hosted by a couple of Playboy bunnies and adult personalities. And, sometimes, and they would take questions from people, and, there'd be some sexy time, whatever. But I remember watching that. And again, obviously seeing beautiful women doing very human things. That's awesome. But I remember just being fascinated by the culture of sexuality and just learning about it. And while people say pornography can give you a very negative view of what's actually out there, because at the time I was a young man above 18, I'd like to point this out, learning about stuff, I could actually have adult conversations with my girlfriend and partner at the time. And I really felt it was a big benefit to me saying and asking questions about it. So I was like, okay, well, how does this work? Why is this way? And getting her perspective as opposed to the hypersexualized fantasy that you would see portrayed in many adult movies. Because Playboy adult movies were always, they weren't as graphic, we'll say, as stuff you'd see on Penthouse or the Spice Channel or whatever. And I also seem to recall another show, and I think this guy got into some trouble at some point later in his career, if I recall correctly. So I may be getting some details on this wrong. But there used to be a show called Family Business with an adult director named Seymour Butts. What a name. And it was about him running his adult empire and I remember several episodes were him trying to dissuade his secretary from entering the industry. And he's like, I don't think you want to do this, or I don't think it's a good idea. Eventually she did, and I think she became very successful in her own right. But I remember I think the guy's name was Cousin Stevie or something like that. It was something stupid. And he worked in the warehouse, and just all the stupid bullshit he would get into. And I always found that really fascinating. And I remember that led me to follow some interesting stuff later in my career, is why I had such an interest early on in TWIG's career to speak with adult people. I was very curious about how the industry worked. And while I may have gotten a very rosy view of it from some people have had a more frank conversation about it with me, but I've also had some very fun conversations with it as well. But yeah, I remember discovering the Playboy channel. And then when they'd have these like video Playmate packages, I would be exposed to people like Pamela Anderson, Anna Nicole Smith before she passed away, and all these interesting things. And I always found that remarkably fascinating, that there could be channels dedicated to this. I mean, obviously sex sells, right? But you would see these movies that were movies that happened to have sex in them. And I'm not talking like the John Holmes, Johnny Wad stuff. I'm talking about, here's two people falling in love, and they're going to go do the human thing. And you would get an actual story. You wouldn't necessarily get all, like I said, the graphic stuff, but you would get something that looked competently shot. And I always thought that was really kind of interesting. But again, it all started with me randomly coming across this nighttime talk show hosted by these incredibly beautiful women. And yeah, I don't know. I think it gave me an education and a respect for understanding the human body and the human condition, and hopefully led to interesting conversations I would then have with my later partners, because I'm like, okay, what I see on movies is obviously not real. Help me become a better person to you. And I felt it was a very positive experience overall. So I pity whoever has to follow this portion of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of gave me a bridge to jump off of.
Okay, go
in
for it.
regards of when you do not have the access to the premium cable stuff, and you want to see, you can absolutely get tired of watching movies cut on TV, especially if you know the movie and like it can lead to some pretty funny, dialogue edits, like one of the most famous ones.
Yippee-ki-yay,
from Die
Mr.
Hard,
Falcon.
Mr. Falcon, there we go.
Yeah.
You also got Snakes on a Plane. I'm tired of these monkey fighting snakes on this Monday to Friday plane. The
Pineapple tough guys.
Casinos fucking edit on Bravo is hysterical at best.
Oh yeah.
Please
So,
send that to me. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, I'll send it to you. So naturally, in my current state, I can stream anything uncut, buy anything uncut. But when I was a kid, I had to go to secretive lengths to do that. And Movieplex was a channel that we had with our cable package that was, like I said earlier, Baby Encore. And it was the place that aired movies uncut. So that ended up being one of the first places I ever saw Creepshow uncut until I got my VHS. It ended up being the first place that I saw Terms of Endearment. Not necessarily cut really matters. I mean, there's a couple F-bombs in that movie, but Tootsie was another one I saw on there. It was the first place that I ever saw Another Stakeout, which is a movie that nobody talks about because it's not a great movie, but I still love that movie. It gave me access to the option to also record uncut movies off of TV because I had Beetlejuice taped off of Comedy Central. I had Golden Child taped off of TNT. There were movies that I would record the TV cuts because I did want to have them, but after a while, those TV cuts just they're not the real thing unless they have scenes that aren't altered and whatnot. But Movieplex would show no commercials and start to finish an uncut film, so that was kind of the place that I would hub to look out for stuff if I wanted to watch it in my young opinion because it's just like if it's on TV, that's the TV cut. Who cares? I want to see what it's like uncut. And the thing with Movieplex was they didn't show a lot of crazy stuff. I think the only one that I can possibly think of surprising besides Creepshow being on there, I feel like I watched Psycho 2 uncut on there once. So it wasn't a big after dark kind of hub, but that was the place that I went to either watch and or record movies that were, uncut on TV, which besides Comedy Central's secret stash every now and then was not something common you came in contact with. I remember TNT and TBS would once a year air Saving Private Ryan uncut, but it would have a huge notice in the beginning that it was uncut. Same thing with USA airing The Godfathers. Sometimes they would air those uncut and they would have a huge promo at the beginning. But if you were not a little rich boy like Ken and had access to these premium cable packages, you had to go to your own lengths to figure out what channels aired what. And what was even more interesting was going back to WGN for a second. Some of those TV cuts were really different from the actual movie. Some of them would rearrange scenes around, not often, but some of those I remember in a way that they're not the way that the final cut of the film came to be. And you had mentioned Scream. I'm going to give my final honorable mention because there, you can find a lot of information about it still today, but Chiller.
Yeah.
Chiller was the place that I saw Freddy's Nightmares for the first time. Chiller was the place that I saw Good versus Evil, aka GVE. It was the first place I ever watched the movie Cat's Eye. It was the first place I ever saw the movie Nightmares with Emilio Estevez and the Bishop of Battle. That is a wild fucking movie that I cannot recommend enough. But Chiller was my access to Twin Peaks. It was my access to fucking monsters. Chiller was a great channel. You can still find bits of it around today. But it was definitely a hub for a horror fan when we were having that resurgence in the early aughts of really getting into the horror fan iconography and realizing that they had people out there. Chiller was the place to go if you wanted to find deep cuts, famous titles, and just weird shit that you would not watch otherwise.
You gave me a memory, and I'm really glad you mentioned this about the early aughts. I forgot about this, and I've talked about animation a couple of times here. It exists, but as part of a package on Amazon now. It might be on traditional cable. I'm pretty sure it still is, and it was called Teletoon. And Teletoon in Canada is our version of the Cartoon Network-ish. But early on in its career, back when I was, again, living on my own, and it had limited programming, but it had amazing programming. So it had a lot of Deke stuff, but it had a lot of stuff from MTV and experimental stuff too. And there are several television shows that I remember that really stick out in my mind, and even today I still quote. There's a show done by Pete Williams, I want to say his name is, and it's the show called Undergrads. And if you know about this show, you know its legacy, its history. It was a very short run show, and they've been making a movie for like 10 years, and occasionally he'll update the Facebook with the progress of whatever it is. I hope it eventually happens. But I remember they would have shows like Mission Hill, which is one of the first times I'd ever seen a gay character on TV that wasn't a complete fucking caricature. I would see, I think the show was called, it wasn't called Totally Spies, but it was an MTV show about these two suave dudes, and it was Agent number 1 and Agent number 2. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I can't place the name of it.
Yeah, I think it's called Totally Spies.
No, it's Totally Spies. Totally Spies
is the three girls, the Charlie's Angels.
The Charlie's Angels, but also it was Fetish of the Week show.
Yeah, it was really weird. It was really funny, but it had really clever ass writing. That's also where I first saw The Oblongs, which was my first exposure to
You're talking
Will
about
Ferrell.
Spy Groove, by the way.
Spy Groove, that's it.
There we go.
That show was fucking cool. And
God, you just brought me back with that. Jeez.
I know, right?
And Spy Groove.
They would have random reruns of the 1960s Spider-Man, endless Hanna-Barbera stuff. And as the station would evolve, it would eventually get stuff like Pokemon, Power Rangers, Teen Titans. It showed a lot of really amazing animation, and I always felt the quality was really good. And then eventually they would develop a spin-off called Teletoon Retro, which you can guess. But I remember seeing shows like Thundercats on there. I think they even showed Transformers, G.I. Joe. Like, they had an outstanding catalog.
Yeah, for me it was I would wake up at it was like 5 a.m. on Cartoon Network was the Boomerang hour. It was like 5 or 6 in the morning.
Yep. Oh man, you could get the classic Scooby. You could get some.
And then,
oh my God.
But if you woke up a little earlier, they would play like a half hour to an hour of Pink Panther cartoons.
Yep.
And man, those cartoons stick with me to this very day. They still make me giggle. Like the Pink Panther cartoons are like A+ cartoons in my opinion. I wish they had released them on 4K. They still have not.
That reminds me.
They've got to get around to them because they've been acquiring, I think, some of the stuff back too. You saying the thing about cartoons though, I will give a shout out to ways that you can still kind of get this experience if you want to have it. And one of the two ways is MeTV. MeTV, which is the host for Svengoolie right now. It has a bunch of classic TV shows, including Batman, Lost in Space. You can find it through your local affiliate, or if you get the Friendly TV app, which I've mentioned on the show before, which is how I get my access to Lifetime Movie Network. You can have MeTV, and you also, depending on which package you get, you can get a DVR. So if you want to have a cable experience, MeTV is a good one. Or if you want to go traditional and you still have an antenna laying around, Comet, you can get on most stations here in the Midwest area at least, is a movie hub channel that you can find gold and trash and everything in that just classic TV way. They'll show you ads for what's coming up. There's commercials. And it's just movies, again, that you would probably not find otherwise except having that cable experience. So MeTV and Comet are two that are currently available that if you are listening to this and being like, oh, I'm so sad I missed this era, you can kind of get a taste of it. You did miss the era, and the best way you're going to do that is to go back and watch YouTube videos of some of the stuff that people have uploaded. Have you seen the compilation that the dude put up of the entire launch of the Sci-Fi Channel and all the promos?
No, and you need to link that in the channel right fucking now.
I will do so. It brought me back. The sci-fi intros, like the fucking little music stings and everything that they used to have. Oh my God.
What was a total trip was recently Warner Brothers made a deal with Tubi and dumped like 150 shows onto Tubi, and some of them are like real pulls from like Saturday morning for me. And just like reading the list of all the stuff that got added to Tubi from Warner Brothers catalog, I'm just like, oh God, these are sending me back.
Do you know MeTV has the uncut Warner Brothers cartoons, by the way?
Yep.
Yeah, they
So
are.
does-
They're airing
so-
those in the original form. There's no cuts to them. Like, that's the only way you can basically see them as we would remember them.
Now-
Also,
Yeah, sorry.
I don't know if the Tubi versions are cut or not. I haven't checked.
It's 50-50. I mean, unfortunately, this is the era we're in to where we'll just fucking kick the can down the road. The corporations have a little too much power, and we have unfortunately seen some censoring of both movies and shows starting to happen on streaming services, especially. So it's you're kind of 50-50 now. It's going to be hit or miss. It's crazy to think that The French Connection, one of the most famous films of the 70s, on 90% of streaming services now is cut, and probably will be cut forever now.
Yeah.
You guys reminded me of something, and then we'll begin to kind of wrap this up for the day. There was a channel that I discovered, and it really inspired my love of classic TV. And it's a Fox channel, but not in the way you might expect. Back in 1994, the FX network launched.
Yeah.
And it was mostly 60s and 70s and maybe some early 80s television shows. But the cool thing about it is they had interactive shows that were live in studio.
Yep.
And the show I used to specifically focus on, because Dave mentioned this in a previous recording we've done, was about Collective Soul. And the show I used to watch was a show called Sound FX. And it had 3 hosts. I can't remember. I know one of them was named Matthew, but one of the other hosts was movie actor Orlando Jones. And I remember having interactions with the show because I would email and call in. And that's where Tom Bergeron of America's Funniest Home Videos would eventually do stuff on there. Jeff Probst had a show on there. I think it was called Back Chat or something like that. And it was something kind of incredible at the time. Like, and I remember me and my grandparents would watch it because we'd watch 8 is Enough. There was another show we used to watch, something, and it was like a witch show or something. If you said it, I would probably know. It wasn't I Dream of Jeannie, but it was something in the same vein. But either way, I remember watching The Green Hornet on there, and that was really fucking cool to me. Like, yo, this guy's like Batman, but doesn't have all the cool gadgets, but he's still awesome. That's fucking Bruce Lee. And I remember just, again, being really absorbed by this, but to very scatterbrained here. The reason I recall this channel is for this reason. So on Sound Effects, they would have album picks of the week. And they picked one album that would shape my musical identity for decades. They were talking about Weezer's 1994 Blue album. And they would talk about it, and they would show music videos, and they played the one of the music videos for it. And I think at the time that was the Buddy Holly song, which was included on the Windows 95 CD. But I remember seeing that on there. I'm pretty sure. I remember them talking about Collective Soul, the Shine album. I'm pretty sure they had them in studio for an interview at one point. And yeah, I remember that channel being so vivid and part of my identity. I mean, obviously, as the show went on, FX would very much change who it was. The live shows became less and less and less until I think their last show was like Breakfast Time with, like I said, the aforementioned Tom Bergeron. And eventually we'd start to get great shows like Fargo would come out of the FX. Now, more recently in my wheelhouse, Alien Earth, stuff like that. And it's amazing to think it all began with reruns of like I Dream of Jeannie and like all these others. Man, I'm gonna have to find like an old programming lineup because I was curious to see all these random 50s and 60s shows, and I'm like, people used to watch this? It would blow my mind. So I guess, guys, this has been an unexpectedly deep topic. I didn't expect this to go as well as it did. So, Dave, thank you for thinking about this. This was a nice trip down memory lane here today.
Happy to do it.
All right there, guys. So that's going to do it for this edition of RAM, the Random Access Show, where we talk about whatever the fuck comes to our mind. So again, if you want to interact with the show, we'd love to hear from you. We are primarily on Blue Sky, thisweekingeek.net. You can find most of us on there. Dave, I know you have an Instagram and a Letterboxd. What are those?
That's correct. So you can find me on Instagram at David's Watching Movies Again. That is all one word basically together. And you can also find me on Letterboxd at David SWMA, which stands for David's Watching Movies Again. And I will wrap up by simply saying there are a plethora of compilations on YouTube for Sci-Fi Channel, AMC, Fox, El Rey Network, TNT, all these places that there used to be the cable was the thing. Like, there weren't streaming services. I know we're sounding like old men, but there was an experience that came with it. And if you want to see what it was like to not be able to skip the ads, to get prompted to see what's coming up this week, like, I think it's so crazy to think that at one time we all would be sitting around our TVs on a scheduled time, whether it was the premiere of a show or the cable access premiere of a movie, all this stuff. Like, there was a time that it bonded us, and now that it's so spread about, that bonding is kind of gone. And it's like, that's why we talk about shows.
There's no monoculture anymore.
Yeah,
no,
I mean, like,
it's blended.
I think the closest we get is when HBO shows The Last of Us, or if Amazon drops Fallout at like 9 p.m. on like a Tuesday. It's not often. I mean, I think
it's like fucking Sopranos. They literally had thousands of calls at the end of the series because that they flooded their phone lines and took them out for a second because of the ending of Sopranos. Not going to spoil it on the show, but like the cut to black, like everybody thought that their TV had fucked up. Like, they thought that they had missed something. That happened when that episode premiered, and like, you do not get that anymore. Like, you will probably never get that again, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, television and entertainment, it's a magical medium, and it's transformed so much. So we're definitely going to talk more about stuff like this in the future, and that's kind of what RAM is. And I guess, Ken, if people want to find you around the interwebs, where would they have to go?
I'm Ken Reels pretty much everywhere. Blue Sky, Letterboxd is where most of my existence lives.
Fantastic. So once again, guys, we thank you for joining us today. If you want to see links to all of our social media, it's included in the episode post, and maybe Ken will post some of the YouTube links if you want to see some of the things that we've been talking about, because he's the person who does all the write-ups here for the show. So anyway, guys, for This Week in Geek, we have been from the magical, mystical lands of Ohio,
David Oyer,
Tony Soprano's home state,
Ken from This Anime,
and I've been Mike the Birdman, saying be excellent to each other. We'll catch you guys again real soon, right here on thisweekingeek.net.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.